Okay, so in your opinion, Trump said the election is going to be rigged.
In my opinion,
What do you think?
voter fraud should be a felony. Okay? If I'm going to do one thing for the next 4 years, no matter who wins the election, it's try to make voter fraud a felony, at least in Montana. It's the most valuable single thing an American has, is his vote. Okay? And if it is usurped or cheated in order to rig an election, I would tell you the truth, it ought to be a capital crime as far as I'm concerned. Nothing is more valuable to an American, and to any society that's a democratic or a republic, which we are. We're not a democracy, but.
Yeah, but Obama told him to stop running.
Who gives a damn what Obama says? Okay, I mean, I respect the presidency, but presidents have often said things that were not very valuable.
Well, he claimed that it's based on no facts.
It's not true. Obama and the Democratic Party reported Acorn. I can show you pictures of Acorn's members standing outside polls with clubs in their hands. Is that going to discourage you from walking into the poll? Okay, of course it is, and it's happened time and time again.
Explain what Acorn is, maybe.
Acorn was a Democratic group, mostly made up of blacks, as a matter of fact. And if you see a big black fellow standing at the entry with a club in his hand, he's pretty intimidating. Pretty intimidating. They were eventually that particular group was eventually disbanded because they were found out what they were doing, but they just move out and form another group. So, and I can show you a picture of a warehouse that was found with 10,000 ballots already pre-marked. Okay? That's as crooked as it gets. Crooked as it gets. They weren't utilized yet because there wasn't an election yet, but they were pre-printed and in a warehouse. And it wasn't rented by Republicans, that warehouse. Yeah. And believe me, when I say Republicans and Democrats, I'm a conservative. Republicans are culpable for many of the wrongs in this country. We wouldn't be $19 trillion in debt unless they were trying to buy votes right along with Democrats. And by buying votes, I mean unless they were approving projects that we couldn't pay for.
Okay. So, but why do you think Americans shouldn't vote for Clinton?
Well, I think open borders is one of the very good reasons, and the fact that she has no preoccupation with budgets. She thinks that we can just go ahead and borrow money from China, and go more deeply in debt all the time, and I think that's about as unhealthy as anything could be. When you grow government, right now we're at a point where a couple of years ago, the Department of Transportation, which has far too many people in it, so they don't have enough to do, so they're looking to solve problems that aren't there. They came out and said, okay, we can no longer have street signs in the United States that are all uppercase. They have to be upper and lowercase. That would have cost several $billion in the United States. It's ludicrous, and that's typical of too much government. Okay, as an independent businessman, I learned a long time ago that if you have one person in your company who has too much work, they're working 12 hours a day, so you hire another person. Now you have two people working 6 hours a day, but having to fill up an 8-hour day with 6 hours of work. It's destructive. It's destructive, and that's exactly what happens in big government.
see. And that's what worries you the most.
What worries me the most? Well, I think the budget and big government and our giveaway mentality in this country. Hard work makes a man, hand out, palm up, forsakes a man. I think that mentality killed one of my sons. Okay? He was able, instead, rather than go out and take a $10 an hour job after making $20 an hour, he could go down and get unemployment. He could go down and get welfare. So he didn't have to work. So when you don't have to work, idle hands, it's the worst thing that can happen to a human being. You have to be busy. You have to work. So he got into some bad things, and it killed him. And giveaway programs are horrid, absolutely horrid. Now, they're. Pardon me?
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, well, but it is. It's a terrible thing. I mean, you can't. If productivity is the best thing that can happen to a human being. You feel good about yourself. If you don't feel good about yourself, you start feeling bad about everything and everybody else. It's not a good thing.
Okay. Do you think you're a Trump supporter or you're a Republican supporter?
I'm not a Republican supporter at all. I was early on in my life, but I'm a conservative, and that word has been misconstrued over many years. I want to conserve what is good and was good about this country. Okay, and that's the Constitution. We have a document that by following that document made this the greatest economic power in the world, and a power who was able to do more for other people. Yeah, another thing I learned a long time ago is you can't do for somebody else until you do for yourself. You got to take care of yourself so you can are economically able to take care of other people. Okay.
That's why you're saying Obama's government is not able to take care of the Americans. That's why.
They are able to give away Americans by taking from other Americans. You can't give to somebody as a politician without taking from somebody else.
Can you sort of define and explain a little bit more in detail what does conservative mean to you?
Conservative means to me, first off, abiding by the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution of the United States does not does not dictate to the federal government that they should do anywhere near what they're doing today. Okay? It's to provide for the defense. It's to provide for the borders. It's not to provide welfare. It's not. The Constitution is so totally misconstrued now, and it's to allow the states. We're a republic, not a democracy. Okay, that means that Montana has 2 senators with 1 million population, just like California has 2 senators with 35 million population. Okay, our forefathers were smart enough to say that people who are outside of the cities, people who work the land, have a greater basic understanding of humanity and what we need than people who are crowded together in cities and are walking around like this all the time, worried about what's happening next to them. So Montana is able to wield as much influence in the city with 1 million people, or Wyoming with 500,000 people, as California is with 35 million people. That's why we are a republic, not a democracy. Democracy is one man, one vote. Okay?
What do you say about other Republicans who have turned their backs?
Oh, I think that they're destructive. I think they're turncoats. So it's as simple as that. I mean, he is an obnoxious loudmouth at times. Okay, but that's fine. I would rather have an obnoxious loudmouth than a liar. Okay, she says exactly what she wants to say and needs to say in order to get herself in office. That's all she cares about. I don't think she'll do a lot of destructive things to the country. I think she'll be so busy taking care of herself that she won't have time to worry about whether or not I'm doing well out here in Montana. I have to take care of myself too. But she's lined her pockets since she's been in office more than any politician in the history of this country. She sold, I'll give you the biggest example. She approved the sale of 20% of America's uranium production. Uranium is what's used to make atomic bombs. Yeah. Of uranium production to the Russians. She approved that sale. Within 2 weeks, the Clinton Foundation got a donation of $140 million from 9 Russian businessmen. Now, isn't that a coincidence?
It's totally not a coincidence. Okay, so but now the polls are giving Clinton a slight lead over Trump.
My great hope is that there's not one mechanic who slides under that car with a wrench in his hand. There's not one of these guys who's out here right now putting up my gutters or trimming my trees. There's not one teacher who works hard and dedicated every day who's going to vote for that woman. They're not going to say, I'm going to vote for Trump, because they're not going to say, I'm going to vote for an obnoxious loudmouth. But they are when they get in the booth. I think you're going to see the greatest crossover. I may be totally wrong, and I pray to God I'm not. But I think you're going to see the greatest crossover of Democrats and independents to a Republican, and not because he's a Republican, because he's not her. Okay?
Right. But, yeah. What's your thought on Jill? I mean, people who are sick of Trump, I'm sorry to say that, they said they're going to vote for the third candidate from the Green Party.
Well, all they're doing is casting their vote aside. I mean, none of those third, fourth, I don't know how many. I just cast my ballot the other day, and there must have been 4 other names on the ballot. I don't know. But none of those people have a chance of winning. All they're going to do is take, and then they may take votes from her, they may take votes from him. I voted for a third party candidate once in my life, I think, and it's a frustration is all it is.
Okay. Last question, but not least. How about if you wake up on November 9th and find out that it's not Trump who wins?
I'm going to do the same thing I've done all of my life when somebody won. I'm going to take my head down and my tail up and go to work for my family and try to do the right thing on a day-to-day basis. That's all you can do, and that's all you should do in this country. Oh, of course. No question about it. Number one, she wants to take our guns, okay? And we'll have a big fight as far as whether or not we're able to protect the Second Amendment, part of the Constitution, again. And there's no question that there's a lot of things bad happen because of guns, but not nearly so many things bad happen as they'd like us to believe by the rhetoric that we get out of Washington, D.C.
Okay, I think that's it.
Is there anything that Donald Trump has done in his campaign that has made you uneasy, or? Well,
of course. I mean, the locker room talk is going to make anybody uneasy. Making a comment like that. I can't speak for you, but I guarantee you have made comments that you weren't happy with, and worse that later that you hadn't made. I guarantee you I have. there's not a man in this country that can cast stones because they all live in glass houses. Okay, and he's said some stupid things. He's not a politician. That's what I love about the guy. He's not a politician. He's doing this election with his own money to a great extent. When has that ever happened in this country before? Okay, here's a guy who's made tons of money. He spent, I don't know, $50-60 million so far, maybe more. Maybe we'll never know. He's also gleaned more Republican votes than any candidate to ever run for the office. He's also gotten more donations from more people, small donations. That speaks of exactly what I said about the guy who's got the wrench in his hand and is rolling it under that car to get grease on himself. He's the guy that sent in $61. Okay, I think that gives me great hope for the country. Great hope.
What do you think about the allegation that he hasn't paid his share in taxes for the last...
Let me tell you a little secret. Have you ever owned a piece of real estate? Okay, let me tell you. You're going to pay huge taxes. If you buy things, you pay sales taxes. You pay incredible real estate taxes. This man paid more taxes than all the politicians put together in Washington, D.C. right now. He's very foolish not to have his people just total up the taxes he's paid. Inventory tax, real estate tax, employment tax. He's a creator. He's created all of these jobs, all of this real estate, and all of that pays taxes. Doesn't necessarily pay income tax. And the only way you avoid income tax is by investing in the things the government wants you to invest in. You got to have write-offs. I used to be in the tax shelter business. I'm telling you, you don't avoid taxes. What you do is invest in things the government wants you to invest in that are write-offs, that they allow you to take your taxes and put them to other uses. That's how you avoid taxes. It's very simple. And if they did some more things like Reagan did to allow people to avoid taxes, the money would be put to far better use than it is when it's sent to Washington, D.C. Does that make sense to you?
So you think that so Trump holding on to the money that he would pay for?
He doesn't hold on to it. You don't avoid taxes by holding on to your money. You only avoid taxes by spending it, with the exception of the fact of depreciation. Okay, if you buy a building and you're able to depreciate it, which is to write it off a little chunk at a time over a number of years, that's you don't spend that money. But other monies, when you pay sales tax, when you pay inventory tax, when you pay employment taxes, those are taxes. That's money you're spending. Otherwise, you don't avoid. Paying a tax on it. So that's all BS. It's smoke and mirrors.
I noticed that you have a Ryan Zinke sign.
I do have.
But I didn't see a Trump sign.
Yeah.
I just didn't have. If somebody would have handed me one, I'd put it up. I'm not a bit bashful. You'll see it. Yeah, if you go out and look at the back of my truck, you'll see a Zinke and a Trump sticker on the back of the truck. I think a lot of the reasons you don't see those is because people are afraid to admit that this guy is speaking for them.
Why is that? Why do you think people are afraid?
Because he's a loudmouth. I mean, which is fine. I have more oddball friends, loudmouth friends, obnoxious friends, probably than any human being on earth. I don't judge people by the fact that they're blustery, that they bluster, or I judge them by what they do, the content of their character, as Martin Luther King said.
So I guess I am.